Some people say time is money, but I think it's worth more than money, and I'll explain why in this episode of my show.
Are you interested in property investing, success or money? Well, you're in the right place. This is the Michael Yardney podcast, where each week you'll learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in 20 minutes or less. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, who has once again been voted Australia's leading property investment advisor. That's the fourth time he's won a similar award in the last 6 years.
Welcome to this week's show. This is what I'm calling the summer series, where I'm replaying some podcasts that I've conducted in the past but have never shared with you as part of the Michael Yardney podcast. And today we're going to teach you how to invest your time like it was money. People say time is like money, but in fact, I know when I spend money, I often invest it and I make more of it. But when I spend time, I've never found a way of getting it back. So we're going to teach you a different concept of time management. So it's the beginning of a new year. A lot of us have got these ideas about how we're going to make more of this year. So hopefully at the end of this session, you're going to learn how you can make more of your time, take advantage of the opportunities that this great new year is going to offer you. And being part of my summer series, this is a longer show than normal because I hope you've got a bit more time to spend investing in yourself. And while you're listening, I'm on a cruise. Pam and I have hopped onto the cruise now and we're heading south, down South America. I'm looking forward to going to the Falkland Islands. I've actually been there once many, many years ago. That was great. And then on to Antarctica and then back up the other side of South America. But today, let's learn about how to invest your time like it was money.
Imagine you were able to transform your relationship with time so that you had more balance, were more organised and focused, and so that you're able to work less and accomplish more. How would that impact your life? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm Louise Bedford, and together with my good friend Michael Yardney, we're going to help you hit peak productivity as a trader, as a property investor, and as an entrepreneur. This recording is for you if you've sometimes wondered why some people seem to achieve so much and why you're left feeling overwhelmed when just one more thing is added to your to-do list. You'll get so much more out of this recording if you take notes and really look for how to apply these principles to your life. This could be a turning point for you. By listening carefully and looking for the lessons, this might just be the trigger that allows you to close more deals, make more profitable trades, and enjoy your children fully. You see, time is the one thing where we don't get a second chance. So where do you need to spend more time? Where do you waste time? What are your key priorities today? Often, it's not about managing our time, it's about managing our priorities so that we achieve the most out of our time and our life. Michael, one of the things that you're known for is being able to juggle your priorities so that you achieve your goals. Can you start our conversation by perhaps giving us an idea how you manage to do this?
Thanks, Louise. Well, I think there's two concepts that I've learned over the time. First of all, it's important to know what's important. It's important to know what's going to get you results. You see, I find lots of things seem urgent, but they're not really important, or not to me necessarily. And the second concept I think we should discuss as we go on today is that people say time is money and they think if they work harder or more, they're going to become wealthy. And Louise, that's only partly true. My biggest breakthrough came as I learned that the hours worked you have got no bearing at all on the results you accomplish, or I guess even on the dollars you earn. If you swap time for money, you only can get so far. You need to leverage and swap results for money. And when you do that, you're suddenly going to realise that not all time's created equal. Sure, you can earn a decent living working hard, but I learned that if you really want to become truly wealthy, you need to leverage your time. You need to be able to do things in a smarter way to become wealthy. And as we go on, maybe I can share some of those concepts, Louise.
Oh, I think that is spot on. One of the best tips I was given was actually to think that you're about to go on holidays tomorrow, and that way you can make your day really, really count. The one thing that's ticking away for everyone is their time. And although this runs contrary to what 99% of people would have you believe, you have to put yourself above everyone else. And I know some people have more trouble doing this than others. Some people who are particularly caring, or maybe they are just soft souls, they don't realise that that touch of selfishness, if you like, if you want to call it that, that is really the key. The truth of the matter is that if we don't have enough time, we don't have enough to achieve everything that we want to focus on. But what often we lack is integrity with our own time. So
it's a bit like when you go on the planes, isn't it? And they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, solve your own problems, look after yourself first, then you can help other people, can't you?
Oh, I think so too. And I think women often are the worst with this because they think, oh, I have to give. But they forget that their own energy reserves can be depleted. And really, if everything's revolving around you, if you deplete your own energy, hey, things run fairly slim. They can draw to a complete standstill. So
I understand what you mean, yeah.
You've got to really embrace your own needs and put your own needs, your own goals, and especially your own prosperity above everybody else's goals. Now, I guess it's one of those things where it sounds quite harsh to say, but Michael, you're my unreasonable friend. Both of us are best-selling authors in our own right. You've got best-selling books on everything to do with mindset, and we're going to hear a bit more about that, I'm hoping, as well as real estate, and my specialty is the share market. Now, as leaders in our field, I really feel with this podcast that we have to say exactly the way it is. Otherwise, funnily enough, we will be wasting everybody's time. So if you're hearing us say things that are harsh, just understand that that is the way that we actually go about living our own lives. Michael,
Louise, I think if they heard from us what they hear from everyone else, they'd be surprised, or I guess they'd be disappointed, because we have been lucky in our own personal lives and for the people we mentor to get better results than average. So therefore you have to assume we're doing things differently. And yeah, some of this is a bit harsh and a bit different to how other people tell you to run your lives, isn't it?
Yeah, that is often the way. And often I feel that time management is linked to your own personal integrity. For example, if you have that saying, you do what you say you're going to do in the back of your mind for everything, then that is fantastic. I was actually just on the phone to a gentleman who has had this series of catastrophes, Michael, just before we had this chat. And it turns out that he has never, ever once done what he told me he was going to do, and he wondered why he couldn't make it in the share market. Now, what are your thoughts on that, Michael?
Oh, I think that you do have to have a level of integrity in all areas of your life, but integrity for yourself. And I think one of the things you're hinting at also is self-respect. You've got to respect yourself as well as respect other people, clearly. But who comes first?
Yes,
You've got to look after yourself and those loved ones close to you.
Definitely. There's actually a book that talks about this. It's called The Forgotten Secret to Phenomenal Success. It's a fantastic book. The basic principle is do what you say you're going to do. And I'll be basing a little bit of this discussion on that book because it has affected me so deeply, as well as some of the work of Milteer, who is a time management specialist, and I find her absolutely terrific. I just want to really discuss this integrity issue. Having time integrity means that you're honouring commitments to yourself. And this is where I think a lot of successful traders and individuals can let themselves down if they take on too much. They do what they say they're going to do for other people, and they bust a gut to honour a commitment to them. However, when it comes to themselves, they procrastinate. They take a phone call when they should be in the middle of concentrating on their own task, or they go shopping when they should be working. I see it time and time again. People let let emergencies get in the way of their own personal projects. So when people get out of whack with their time integrity, they're basically, what they're willing to do is to save other people, but not themselves. So I feel with my traders in my mentor program, we look to see where time leaks are occurring, where we focus on worries and anxieties that drain our energy, when we don't focus fully on developing the skills we need to be able to have an overall outcome occur. So this is really important. If you're listening to this discussion with my mate Michael, it's essential that you maintain that time integrity, and so that you've got the mental and physical and spiritual, financial energy to move through to the next level. Now, one of the things that Michael and I have discussed in the past is dealing with a focus day. Now, Michael, I don't know, have you had a focus day recently? Because I'm looming for one, actually.
Now, I've actually set aside every Wednesday, and so I actually don't come into the office, and that's the time I spend on my A and B activities. But we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
I'd better describe what one is. Now, a focus day is where you isolate yourself from the world and you just focus on developing one core skill. So no matter how you do this, I mean, a lot of people decide not to take their mobile phone with them or check their emails. They have like a vision day even, where they work out what they want for themselves down the track. And the key is that day you don't let distractions eat up your time or interfere with your own goal. You know, everybody has only 1,440 minutes a day, whether you're a stay-at-home mum, whether you're a best-selling author, whether you're a superb real estate investor. It's one thing we all share. So if you're saying, and if it comes out of your lips, if you're saying, I don't have time, it's just not an excuse anymore. You should be saying things like, it's just not a priority at the moment. That is vastly more accurate. It brings the control back to you, and then you're actually telling the truth. We all find time for things we really want. One of the things I'd like to chat about, Michael, and I know you love this too, is the Pareto principle. Now, I know that we've discussed this in the past, but this gentleman, Vilfredo Pareto, was an Italian engineer. Now, he was
an Italian accent.
Oh, I did my best. Come on. I've got no Italian blood in me whatsoever. He was actually...
but he changed our lives, didn't he,
He did. He really did, and it's amazing. He introduced the concept of Pareto efficiency. And funnily enough, also, just as a bit of gossip, he was also responsible for popularising the term elite.
Really? I didn't know that.
There we go. See, I come out with some good ones, don't I, hey? Now, the Pareto principle was named after him, and it's built on the observation that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And this is almost across the board. So 80% of the crimes are committed by 20% of the criminals. 80% of the tennis grand slams are won by 20% of the players. 80% of the healthcare costs are incurred by 20% of the population. So it is actually quite an interesting concept too, because it's within the main population, but it's also within subsets within populations. And this is almost across the board. So 20% of the people hold 80% of the wealth. And hey, if you drill down further, you can actually even apply that further and further. So of that 20%, there's a 20% of that 20% who hold 80% of that previous amount. It's a fractal distribution for those of you that are maths heads. It's a term phrased by Mandelbrot, who's a smarty. So, Michael, can we talk more about this? I know that this is something that we've discussed extensively before, to be in that top 20%, to have that top 20% of decision-making, the clarity that comes with that, so that we can have more than I guess, 80% of the population. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, I think that's where most people stop, but let's go a little bit further. So, yeah, everyone wants to be in the top 20%. I'd rather go further. Look, as I've already explained, working harder isn't the answer. It wasn't yesterday. It's not going to be tomorrow. Working harder in many ways is a reaction to the fear that you feel you've just got so much to do, but it often won't get you the results that you're after. In fact, the harder you work, the chances are the less you'll accomplish, or less that really matters that you're going to accomplish. So I know it sounds easy for me to say, but hang in there and I'll explain it a little bit more, because people say to me, Michael, how do you write so many blogs every day? How do you run a national company? How do you end up having a new book out every 8 to 10 months, and yet you still take 2 large holidays every year? You spend time with your family, you spend time with your kids. And I've actually learned to use the Pareto principle that you talked about in more detail. So just going back to it, as he said, 20% of your actions generate 80% of your results. But if you go further, that means then the next 20% of that first 20% produces 80% of the 80% of your results. I know it's lots of numbers and maths, but it basically means that 4% of your effort, 20% of the 20%, could well generate 64% of your results. Now, the analytical people don't get bogged in detail. We're talking principles. The big picture principle means that if you drill down even further, 20% of the 20% of the 20%, in other words, about 1% of your activities, actually produce 50% of your results. And I know that's true for me. What about you, Louise? Have you noticed that there's just some things you do that produce a hell of a lot more than most other activities?
Definitely. And it's my total focus to try and continue pouring allocation of resources into those genius level areas. Roger Hamilton, who's a friend of yours, Michael, I know that in his most recent book, he talks about levels of genius and where does your genius lie? And that is a real key. If your genius is in a particular area, gosh, pour resources at that area. I love what you're about to mention to people, though. Are you going to go into your A, B?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. A, B, and C time.
So
I really love you to discuss that.
I then learned when I realised that, as I said a few times, not all time is created equal. It created a hierarchy of activities that I do and the results they get for me. And each one of these has a different dollar value per hour. So I've broken it down to A time, B time, C time, D time. Let me go into a bit more detail. D time is that 80% of what I call unleveraged wasteful time that only produces 20% of your results. That's what most people break down to their everyday activities, and then they break down C time being that leveraged 20% that produces 80% of your result. And for most people, for most time management systems, that's where it stops. They never find out the rest. And while just understanding your C and D time is going to give you better results than most people, unless you get the next distinctions, it's not going to work well for you, because then there's B time. This is that highly focused 4%, the 20% of the 20% that produces, let's say, 64% of your result. I call this the sweet spot. And finally, at the top of the pyramid, there's A time, that magic 1% that every now and then you do, only probably once, twice a year, which is going to give you 50% of your results from these activities. But most people have no idea what activities fall into their A, B, C activities, and so therefore they don't know how to structure their time. So think about it. What are your D activities? What are your C activities? What are your B activities? What's that 1% a year, 1% activity that gives you your A activities that creates so much better result? And when you really get that distinction, you shift your focus from putting in hours to upgrading the work that you do. In other words, more A and B time and less D time in the hours you work, and the results you get are amazing. Louise, can I maybe share an example of how I've done this?
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Sure. Look, imagine you're an accountant who charges, I don't know, $300 an hour. What would your D activities be? If you think about it, it'd be fixing the computer glitches or making the copies or sorting out the mail. But doing things, accountants sort of work out billable and non-billable hours. So that would be the non-billable hours. What should they do with these activities? They should delay them, they should delegate them, they should dump them, the 3 Ds. You simply can't afford to do them. They shouldn't be doing that. And what would their C activities be if you were an accountant? Maybe that's the billable time you got when you're working with a client, when you're reviewing a contract, when you're updating a client, stuff you can earn money for. The trap is that what catches most high-income professionals, but lots of other people too, is they seek to increase their earnings by cranking out more hours. So they try and have more billable hours as opposed to working out what else they can do, because you just get exhausted working more of those. So the answer lies in what I call A and B time, Louise. B time for an accountant could be building a relationship with other professionals who refer them business, or putting systems in place for his accounting system, or creating accounts receivable system that increases the firm's activities more. In other words, those things which are going to actually have so much more leverage. And what would his A time look like? Look, I don't know. It could well be speaking at a seminar where he generates lots and lots of new clients, or writing a book which would generate lots of business in the long term. A lot of these you don't get much in the short term. You spend lots of time writing the book, but that's your A activity, and then it goes on to produce massive results down the track. So can you see the difference there, Louise?
Yeah. Do you know, though, Michael, we've had a chat about being able to get into that level of genius. But do you know what I'm seeing with my traders at the moment is some of them are getting completely overwhelmed with those lower level of activities, so the C and the Ds, if you like, that when the Bs and the As come along, they are so exhausted, they're not spotting them.
Sure. Well, I think the way around that is to structure your days to allow time for it, because otherwise you'll never get around to it, because they work very hard at doing these other things. And I know focusing on using my time more effectively rather than increasing the hours that I work has actually given me double, triple the income over the years, and actually lowered the amount of hours I'm working. So trading time for dollars is the average Australian reaction. Upgrading the use of your time to create more with less time is, I guess, the wealthy person solution. So how do you create it? As I said, not by trying harder. It's not by saying, okay, I'm going to do some A time now. It just doesn't work that way. You know, that'd be like a parent saying to their 3-year-old, okay, right now, let's have some quality time right now. That doesn't work.
You know what you're doing, though? You're time blocking. You are blocking out specific times.
I've discovered that I do that. So therefore, Wednesday is my time for my A and B activities, when I work from home, when I don't have the interruption, when I don't check my emails continuously, when my mobile phone's on silent. And that allows me to structure my time to automatically enjoy A and B time. Unless I set aside that time, unless they're programmed into my diary, Louise, they're not going to happen.
And also I think it's to do with your satisfaction for life. Like from an outsider's perspective, having seen the decision that it took for you to reserve your Wednesday compared to before you were reserving your Wednesday, I think that you seem to be, to me, more productive and less stressed. Do you feel that in yourself?
I believe that's true. And the other thing is I've realised I'm enjoying what I'm doing, so I can keep working longer by working less. I'll be working for many more years. People say to me, Michael, now that your candles cost more than your birthday cake, why? And I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I'm having fun and because I've learned to structure my time to have fun.
And what about for... One of the things I'm thinking about here, Michael, is for the people who are overwhelmed with activities that they can delegate. One of the things I find with my trading chicks, my female sisters in the business, is that they're so busy washing dishes. Hey, they kind of forget that they're traders. I think it's an identity thing too. I think it is how you form your identity can determine how you spend your time. Do you find that as well? Because once my chickie babes actually call themselves a trader and they hold their head up high and they realise they're making money from the markets, it's amazing how many of them hire people to look after the washing and look after their, every day-to-day thing that you can think of. They seem to be driven by an identity, and then that can manage their time, almost like it springs into place.
Well, that's one of the things we said a bit earlier on, that really you've got to delegate or dump those D activities so that you can actually spend time doing the other. And as it goes right back to what you said at the beginning of integrity with yourself and who you are, and I guess also a level of self-respect that this is what your time is worth. Because I see people doing activities that are $15, $20 an hour, and when you say to them, well, how much are you worth? And they say, I'm worth $200,000 a year. I said, no, you're not. Oh, yes, I am. And I said, well, you don't think you are because you're doing $15 an hour activities.
And unless that's for fun, unless that's how you relax by mowing the lawn, because there is a place for that, getting your hands dirty so that you can tune out, really, I think delegation is fantastic. One of the other things I think...
Wait, Louise, just quickly about the mowing the lawn, I remember...
You don't have a lawn because you're in a penthouse.
When I did my old house, my friend Kevin said, I'm going out there to the shed to get my lawnmower. And I said, I got a lawnmower as well. His name's Alan.
Yes, mine's called Brian. Yes, it's good to have one. I think one of the goals is to find out where you're wasting time. Like, a lot of us have time bandits in our lives. Like, do you spend too much time, I don't know, reading email or making personal calls? Track your activities so that you can form an accurate picture about what you usually do. I think when people have done this, they're surprised, Michael. They find that there's a lot of things in their life that they're doing because it's superstitious, or, I should watch the news because then I'm well informed. That you can free up an hour a day. Exactly. You can drop those not essential time wasters from your weekly routine. If it's not creating an outcome that either earns you money, is pleasurable, or gives back in some way to your family or community, heck, what are you doing it for? It's ridiculous. Now, one of the other things I think is to create a time management goal. Now, for me, I didn't have a problem with the news, but for some people they do. So I think make them baby steps. Say, okay, I'm going to watch the news one day a week, and then see if you can block it out completely. Find your work time. Instead of trying to do 5 things at once, just concentrate on one thing. They've actually shown we cannot multitask. And then once you implement that, you can set specific goals and you can track them over time to see if you're accomplishing them. So you could use, there's lots of tools now. There's apps to help you. There's day timers. There's software programs. You can get a program like Outlook. It lets you schedule events really easily. It reminds you of events in advance. It makes your time management much, much easier. Do you use any electronic little beepy things, Michael, or do you do it on paper? What do you do to remind yourself?
Interestingly, both. I use an electronic time management system called Todoist, and there's a free version of that app and there's a paid version. So I put down all my goals on my time management ideas, my things I've got to do on my to-do list, and that can be it's on my iPad, it's on my iPhone, it's on my computer, and it comes up every morning, so I know what I'm needing to do, and I can prioritize them in short-term, long-term goals. And then in the morning, I actually do make a paper list of what I want to do. I've actually gone back to it because I love crossing them out as I do the goals too.
I love that too. I love giving the big tick. Do you cross out? I tick.
No, I put a line through it. It feels good.
That's pleasurable. Yes. And I think also that, just getting back to what you were saying, is starting each day to have a look to see how many tasks are on your list. Like, I had this fantastic anal retentive OCD guy one time that I was training with trading, and he assigned, 30 tasks in the one day for himself, and then he'd feel like a failure if he didn't make it through all 30. So how many tasks do you assign, Michael? What do you do?
Well, some tasks are able to be held off to the next day, and that's why the electronic to-do lists are useful in that regard, because what they do is it'll pass on to the next day. And it also depends if it's my focus day where I'm doing all these tasks, or whether it's a work day when I'm in the office or looking after other people or dealing with customers or clients. So it varies upon what's going on. But there's a trick I learned a long time ago from somebody I met personally, and he's affected me a lot over the years, and that's Brian Tracy. And he wrote a great book called Eat That Frog. And I didn't understand what it meant initially, but the concept was, once you've eaten your frog, everything else tastes good during the rest of the day. So if you've got that one of those hideous tasks that you have to do that sort of weighs you down, as long as it's important, do that first, get it out of the way, and then you'll find that the other tasks are easy.
I like that. That is really important. And I think for me, if I set a time limit for each task, because you're right, they're not all created equal, and I make sure that I stay to that time limit, that is really, really important. Now, Michael, I'd like to have a bit more of an insight about your knowledge. You've worked with so many investors that are involved in your mentor program and at Wealth Retreat, where I come along as well. Maybe you could give us some of your time management lessons. I know we've covered a few, but just perhaps if you could, go into more detail there.
Well, I guess the first one is what we've already said. Don't do it yourself. Delegate. Get a good team of people around you. It's not just a time management principle. It's a sensible business principle. If you're the smartest person in your team, you're in trouble. So I have 4 assistants that help me in different areas of my business, and that's one of the secrets of how I can get as much done. I've actually learned to delegate and not micromanage and trust the people. If you delegate, then take it off your desk, take it off your list. It's off. You've crossed it out. Don't have to look at it again.
And how much can they do though, Michael? Because the difficulty that people that give me as an excuse, they don't want to delegate because they go, well, it's quicker if I do it myself. Or, oh, that person would never do it as well as me. No,
they don't, but it gets done. And I also have systems so therefore I use another program called Basecamp, which is a project management tool. So each of my assistants has their own diary and list of tasks there together with me. And so on that basis, what happens is I assign tasks to them and I can see when they've been done. So I still keep a big picture overview, but I don't have to know the detail of everything. I see what's been done and what's been moved from the to do to the have been done categories. So electronics allows you to do that. Lesson 1, don't do it, delegate. Lesson 2 is it actually takes discipline and practice to change your habits. It's actually really, really hard to force yourself to do something that's hard to do. So I think what you've got to do is identify what's holding you up, what's blocking you up, what's the bottleneck, why aren't you doing it, why aren't you getting up to the gym in the morning, why aren't you learning to be a better trader, why aren't you educating yourself. Write it down, work out where the holdup is, and then you can start taking some action to overcome it. And then you've actually got to get a process, some tactics to help overcome these roadblocks. But I think one of the big ones that you taught me, Louise, is the concept of becoming accountable to somebody.
That's a big one.
You can't slack off. Have a buddy who checks up on you. And I know that you and I are unreasonable friends in a number of categories in our life. I'm not in your sporting category and the gym category because I wouldn't be any good at that, but I am in other categories of your life, and so therefore you choose people who would suit you. And that's why I have mentors. I still have business coaches. I'm part of a number of different mastermind groups so that I can actually get more done by making a commitment, knowing you're going to get on my back, or my business coach is going to get on my back, or my business partners are, because I've said I'm doing it. And so I guess that's the other big lesson. Be part of a group of people to help you move to the next level. Louise, there's some of my tips. What would you use to implement based on the traders you've associated with?
Oh, look, one of the key ones that I love, and I still do, I use myself, is it was given to me by a mentoree as an idea. I set my phone for 20 minutes and I assign myself a task that I think will take 25 minutes, and I have to try and get it done in that time. And there's an alarm that goes off. Now, it is a fantastic method.
That's a really good idea. I've never heard of that. It's good.
It's a good one, isn't it? The guy that gave this to me, Tyrone Smogger, a mentoree, he works with disadvantaged teens. So he has to be aware of short time attention spans, and yep. I can go there, you watch, I can be as distracted as the next person, but I can tell you when I've got that task in front of me and I've got 20 minutes to do it in, I am like some sort of speed demon. I move through it with such clarity, and you'd love it. Do you want to give that a go, Michael?
I will. Well, it's like what you said before, that day before you go away on holidays. Isn't it amazing how much you get done?
I love that. That is such a good concept. Do you know, I've recently come back from a couple of overseas trips, actually, as have you. Japan was one of my recent places that I visited. Now, before I left for Japan, everything was in such fantastic condition. La, angels were singing. It was so good. So I just meant that I could enjoy my holiday, but using that same feeling to take that, I need to be fully up to date by the end of today feeling, to translate that into the rest of your life, it's so good. You will feel fantastic when you implement that. Yeah. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention, because I know a lot of people listening have children that they're involved with in some way, either their own, maybe grandchildren, maybe nieces and nephews. One of the things that I do is when I'm with my children, I am 100% with my children. They have my complete focus. I have delegated away the cooking, the washing, the cleaning, the shopping. And when I have those people, because I've got 2 people in case one gets sick, when I have those people in my house where they're doing kind of, I'm not meaning to sound sexist, but the wife's job, where it's sort of all the things that you, as a woman, as a female in the house, I feel like I should be doing. I have shifted those sideways onto somebody else's shoulders so that I get the glamour job. I get that child.
You don't feel guilty anymore, Louise?
Oh, God, no. I'm so good with that. Wow.
I don't think you should feel guilty, but I bet some people do.
Oh, I think they would.
I think that's my job.
But I get the hugs, and I get the little sick child cuddling up to me, and I get the homework, and I get their little problems. I get to share in their life. Now, I have to say, this has been revolutionary for me as a parent. This is so good, because so often prior to this, I'd be cooking dinner and I'd be going, yeah. So you've got somebody bullying you, chop, no eye contact there. It's just a deplorable habit that we have where we've got the kid in front of us and we're not focusing because we're busy. It is so common. So that's been one of the biggest changes of my life. That's been occurring for the last 6 years, and I love it. I love it when my little ladies come in, and I've got a guy as well who does the cleaning. It's fantastic. Do you delegate your personal things too, Michael?
I haven't got a garden anymore now that we're living in an apartment, a penthouse, but I never did those sort of menial tasks. And again, maybe that's a bad way of putting it, but I thought that my time is more valuable. So when I have spare time, I spend it with my family, I spend it with my kids, I now spend it with my grandkids. I've set aside time every Saturday morning and Sunday morning with my wife, Pam. And it sounds a bit funny that you've got to set time aside to have a date and spend with your life partner, but that makes sure that other things that may seem important at the time, but in the big scheme of things are not important really, don't get in the way. So, yes, I've done that. And just the same as I now have Wednesday afternoons, I see my grandkids and I spend time with them, and I bet you in the future that's something they're going to remember. That's worth a deal to me.
I think that's so good. And as well as being, the family man and the husband, funnily enough, you're also an incredibly consistent writer. You've written how many books now, Michael?
Well, I've just finished my 7th one, which is just out in the bookshops and on Amazon now, and I'm very proud of it. It's called Michael Yardney's Guide to Getting Rich.
Tell us about it.
Well, it came about when I recognised the fact that the rich are getting richer, and most of us actually want to join the ranks of getting rich, but people wondered, why is there this gap, and why is the gap widening? Because it is. Since the global financial crisis, it's been shown that the gap's widening. People wonder, well, why do people work harder? Why am I working harder than everyone else, but I'm actually not earning more? And I learned the concepts in this book for over a decade now, mentoring over 2,000 people. And in my mentorship program, I've had some real successes, some beginners who've become very financially independent. I've had some successful people go up to the next level. And I've also had others who started off and enjoyed it and felt good, but actually didn't get the successes they deserved. And so I observed the habits and the thought patterns and the way the rich and successful. Now, this is not a judge of people. Doesn't mean they're good or bad, but most of us want money, want more, and that doesn't mean that they don't want to be given to the community and spirituality. But I realised over time I could recognise those people, and often within 5-10 minutes of speaking to them in a mentorship power chat, I could recognise those who were going to be successful and those who weren't. And it really had to do with the way they think, the language they used, and their daily habits. And by documenting them, the byproduct of this was this book, Michael Yardney's Guide to Getting Rich. And if you're interested in it, you can go to the website guidetogettingrich.com. And I've actually told the habits of how the habits of wealthy people, and how very differently the 39 ways wealthy people think differently to the average Australian. And it's not just for us. It's for our kids and our grandkids. It's not what you leave your kids, it's what you leave in your kids. So there's a whole chapter also on how to pass this on to your kids and your grandkids, which you owe to them, Louise.
Oh, I love that. That's actually, I felt very privileged on Sunday when you gave me your copy of the book told. It's like holding a newborn. It's so exciting.
That's right. And Louise, no get-rich-quick schemes. So if you're looking for a shortcut, no. But what this book does give is the special money education that most people have always dreamed of having. It's people's opportunity to learn the real rules of wealth and money directly from, let's be blunt, somebody who's made it and who's kept it. But more importantly, it's the chance for the readers to learn from somebody who's also helped thousands of others, students, my students and my mentorees and my clients. I can comfortably, proudly say that over the years, my team and I have built wealth for our clients in the tune of maybe $2 billion worth of assets. So that's the number of transactions we know we've been personally involved in.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing. I want to move forward a little because I know we've covered a lot. We've talked about delegating. We've talked about the things that are important to us, like priorities. And we've talked about your guide to getting rich, which is really good because there's so much more in that book than we're covering in this particular recording. I want to talk about charity work because I know this doesn't have a monetary payoff. And this is something that actually I've received some interesting emails. The trolls are alive and well sometimes, Michael. You get people who say the most bizarre things. So one of them is, oh, it looks good for your family, but what about for the poor people, etc. Now, apart from the fact that we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for our chosen charity, Opportunity International, but I won't get on a little high horse about that. I want to discuss about your views with this as well. The payoffs that we're talking about, they don't have to be strictly financial. The key is to schedule times to focus and not just let yourself drift through life. I believe you can either discipline yourself or you'll be disciplined by external forces, and those external forces will be a lot more harsh. Now, most of the successful people that I've trained have some level of charity focus and they've given to their community in some way. So please don't think we're just mercenary here and we're out to, get rich to the exclusion of others. This is not where we are at all. We're talking about
Louise, I think true wealth has nothing to do with
life.
how many properties you've got, how big your share portfolio is, how much money you've got. I've heard it say that true wealth is what you're left with when all that's gone. It's your health. You know yourself from your personal challenges that if you haven't got your health, all the rest isn't worth it. It's your family, your friends, your loved ones. It's your spirituality. It's the need to keep growing. But I know that we both also have learned the importance of contribution in giving back to the community, and that's a total true level of wealth as well. So it hasn't got to do with money. But Louise, I also believe that any problem that money can solve isn't a problem.
Yes.
So
if money can fix it, it's not a problem. I agree.
So money is really important in those areas where it's important, and it's not at all important in those areas where it's not important, like the giving back and the health and the charity.
So what sort of questions should our investors be asking themselves about their own time challenges, Michael? I'm really keen to hear your thoughts because sometimes the trajectory of our lives is determined by the questions that we ask ourselves.
Oh, definitely. So the questions you ask are very important. The questions you ask about time management to help you stay on track are, I guess, a good one to start with is, what's the most productive and profitable use of my time now? now that you recognise that not all time's created equal, not all activities are created equal. So what is the most productive and profitable use of my time rather than flicking away, working from task to task? And part of that's that eat that frog that we said at the beginning, do the most important task at the beginning of the day, get it out of the way. I guess the other question you could ask yourself is, what's the payoff for doing this right now? It's an important question that a lot of people need to understand the purpose, the reason behind that. Look, I'm continuously bombarded with all sorts of offers and all sorts of things that are important for other people. People want to work with us, work with our database, do joint ventures, use opportunities. What I've worked out over the years is I've made more money by saying no to things than by things I've said yes to. So it's important to understand what's the highest and best use of your time and what I shouldn't be doing as much as what I should be doing. And the other question, I guess, is what your state of mind is like. That's a really valuable question, because usually if you haven't got yourself in the right state of mind before you begin doing things, you tend to fritter away at things. So there's days when I'm much more creative and I can write much better, and other days maybe it's actually just not a good day to start off doing those things, and I'll then do some of my C and D activities. Because interestingly, when I have delegated my D activities to Joe and to Amanda and to others in my office, I've got a whole lot of other brand new D activities, and my D activities have become the A and B activities. So there's always things to do. What you've got to decide is, what should you do? What's the right time of day? And I guess we also, not all morning people. Some of us work better in the morning. Some of us work better at night. Know yourself, know your body, know your mind. Work out when you should be doing things and take advantage of that information, Louise.
That's fantastic. I've actually just listened to a CD from a gentleman called Rob Berkeley talking about a vision day. Now, what you're talking about is some of the questions that you need to ask yourself to hold an effective vision day. The one that I found that was really interesting, and you can team up with a friend to ask yourself this question, is, what gifts do I currently have that I'm not utilising? Now, that is a very deep, deep question. Now, the other thing I'd like to just chat about briefly is procrastination. Because procrastination...
Put that up for a little while, Louise.
I'm with you, Michael. Procrastination is one of those areas that I think has a bad rap sometimes. Sure, sometimes people are born procrastinators, but other times, if you're not a procrastinator and you're dreading something, oh my goodness, you should listen to that dread. Often the worst decisions I have made are when I was being pressured and other people's needs were on top of my own, or I had that little voice in my head that I was not listening to, and the consequences of that. Oh my goodness. So you need to first of all determine, are you the type of person who gets things done mostly and has that little voice of dread where you need to listen to it? Or are you the type of person that, hey, you overload yourself and then you get angry because you can't get everything done? So I think that's the key as well. Do you find, I'm guessing you're not, Michael, are you a procrastinator or not so much?
I do find I have to have breaks in how I work. So I actually reward myself when I've actually finished an activity by getting up and doing something slightly different. So that's probably not as much procrastination. I'm much more disciplined with my activities, but then I give myself little rewards, and it may be just going for a walk, or it may be to ring a friend, or have a little break in between. And one of my rewards, which is a naughty one, is I go to the fridge.
I go to a Lindor ball. I like a Lindor ball as a little reward. Yes,
that's
yes.
right. So I guess that's different to procrastination. But yeah, look, I've found there's some days when it just doesn't all work. I'm in the flow most days. But if it's one of those days I'm not in my flow, then I will actually go to my to-do list and actually action some of those C and D activities because they've got to get done sometime, Louise.
That's right. And as a listener to this show, I'm guessing you already share a lot of the top characteristics required by traders playing at the top of their game or investors playing at the top of their game. In your day-to-day life, I'm guessing that you're already applying some of these fantastic time management skills, but certainly to be able to have these reiterated all in the one place, this is such a valuable resource for you. All of these qualities that we've discussed, it's the qualities that determine whether you will rise or whether you will fall, or even if you're planning to go up a level, it can help you achieve that very next step. Michael, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Probably just to remind them something that may have got lost in the message of a little while ago. To move to the next level, you're going to have to do things differently to what you've done up to now, otherwise you'd be there. You'd have to think differently first because the way you think controls the actions you take and the results you get. And it's really, really hard to do that on your own. So keep educating yourself, but then get mentors to help you get to the next level. You can stand on the shoulders of your mentors and see a lot further forward. When I learned, Louise, that I didn't have to do it all on my own or come up with the concepts on my own, other people had already achieved it and I can follow them, that got me to the next level much quicker. Mentors is one, and then mastermind groups of like-minded people who are not competitive but helping each other is the other big one, Louise.
Oh, that's a winner. Michael, you have been a shining light in my life. Your ability to see beyond and to be my unreasonable friend, I have been greatly honoured. And knowing that the two of us together have helped thousands and thousands of others achieve their own personal goals, it is such a ripple effect. So thank you so much for your time. I hope that everybody listening has picked up at least one or two qualities that you can implement. And when you're looking to implement these ideas, see if you can make it an immediate implementation, something that you'll be doing frequently, and make sure that you've got somebody to check in with. So if you're looking for a property mentor or perhaps even somebody to help you get into your first property, Michael, where can people get in touch with you?
Well, if you go to my blog, propertyupdate.com.au, there'll be a huge number of resources from not just me and my team, but all Australia's leading property experts from all the big research houses write blogs on that. And there'll be ways of finding out a bit more about our services and my mentorship program through that website as well.
Fantastic. And if you're looking to get involved with the share market or perfect your skills as a trader, my website is tradinggame.com.au. Make sure you register for your free trading pack, which includes a trading plan template, a 5-part e-course, and a monthly newsletter. It's been lovely chatting, Michael. Onward and upward.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Louise.
Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode in the summer series of the Michael Yardney podcast. And I hope you got some ideas about how to spend your time wisely. Now, one other way you can spend your time wisely is going back through the archives of the Michael Yardney podcast. Look, we only started the show in August, so why not listen to the last 1920 shows? And you can listen to them at 1.5 times speed. I think I still make sense. And what you're going to be able to do is get through all that information because there's gold in those archives. And next week, I'm going to share a podcast where I was interviewed by Finder.com about how to get started in property investment. But even if you're already an experienced investor, there's many lessons in there for you. So, spend your time wisely.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect, and pass on their wealth through strategic property advice. If you got value from listening to this podcast, please leave us a review and we'll read it out on a future show. Just go to michaelyardneypodcast.com/review and it will take you over to iTunes where you can enter a review and let us know what you think. We'd really appreciate it. If you don't already subscribe on iTunes or on your Android phone, you'll find us there as Michael Yardney Podcast. If you'd like to gain instant access to the show notes or a transcript of the show, head across to michaelyardneypodcast.com. Watch out for our show next week. You learn some new ideas about property investment, success, and money in around 20 minutes.